Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is Guy Cunningham. I am Senior Vice President of Channel Sales at NetSurian, and this is the NetSurian podcast. And I am joined by Tom Guadagno of Velocity Network, located in the beautiful state of Pennsylvania. Tom, I appreciate you spending some time with me having a conversation today.
It's good to be here. It's good to be here.
So, Tom, you've been in cybersecurity and information technology for a significant portion of your career. The last 12 years, you've been in the MSP space. Talk to us a little bit about how you ended up there. How did you end up being an MSP and working for and with Velocity, and what kind of led you up to that?
I actually started out in satellite communications for a company called Digital Music Express, if you're old enough to remember that. I was a studio.
That sounds like a cable channel music.
That's exactly what it was.
Oh, wow. Good guess.
I was a manager of studio operations and actually built the Worldwide Origination Center for them out in Denver. From there, I ended up in TV somehow as a chief engineer for two TV stations here in Erie, Pennsylvania. I did that for about 3 or 4 years, then moved on to be the corporate director of IT. Spent several years doing that and bought into a few TV stations. Once we sold those, I decided to go out on my own and get into the MSP business. So I did that for 12 years, and after 12 years, I had a conversation with the good people here at Velocity, and we decided that I'd like to come on board. It's a lot of opportunity here, and just a great organization.
Well, I'll tell you, we've been impressed with our relationship with Velocity so far, and you're in the probably top 1%, 5% of MSPs. I mean, you're a substantial organization. Tell us a little bit about, Velocity and how you serve your customers and what your lines of business are.
I think, at least in this region, Velocity is pretty unique in the services that we provide and the way we provide service. We really look at it from the security landscape first. If we can't secure our company or our clients, then there's no point, because if you can't keep them secure, you're going to spend all of your time cleaning up messes. So we really focus in on that. And we still support our customers. We still offer them great service. But at the end of the day, it's really about that security level, that security layer.
Yeah, I had a conversation with somebody just today, and they're in the network and the co-location and the cloud infrastructure space. And they were telling me that cybersecurity is bleeding into every conversation that they have. Anything related to technology, I think, is always going to kind of circle back to the security aspect of it at some point.
It is. And as I'm sure you've seen, the threat landscape has changed just in the past couple of years. It doesn't even look the same as it did. The types of threats we have, the threat actors it's big business. It is. They are very well organized and managed, and they run as a business.
I heard a statistic not too long ago that the global cybercrime is a bigger industry than the global drug trade. And
I would absolutely
that
believe
surprised
that.
me.
Yeah, I would believe that. We've seen a lot of money leave, even just our county here in the past 6 months, millions and millions of dollars. Fortunately, I can tell you they were not our clients. Some of them are
That's
now.
good.
I'm happy to tell you that. But it's just, any way they can find to get in, they will get in. They're very patient. Gone are the days where you'd click on a file and, get that ransomware that locks down your computer. Yeah, you still may do that, but really, when it comes to business, that's not what's happening anymore. They like to get on your network, and they will sit there for a very long time to make sure they get everything locked down they could and steal your information.
Yeah, I've seen the average dwell time of a cyber breach go from 270 days to now, the latest I've seen is around 125, 130 days. That's still a long time.
Yes.
So talk to me a little bit about some of the incidences that you've either been part of or that you've heard of in your area within your customers. Either how you've experienced a breach and gotten past it, your customers necessarily, or how you've stopped it, right? And that's the better part of the story, hopefully.
Yes, we've seen breaches from many different vectors. Most common is email. When someone does not employ two-factor authentication, especially, Office 365, if you're not two-factor, it's not if you get compromised, it is when. They're going to get you sooner or later. And that's been the majority of it. We've had people or companies with absolutely no security. They've got their 15-year-old firewall and they said, well, we're secure. A lot of open ports, a lot of things that shouldn't be open are open. Next thing you know, they're shut down. Every computer in the business has been encrypted. And of course, now we've got that going on along with data. They're taking your data and offering it up to the dark web if you don't pay. Mm-hmm. So the level of extortion is becoming very popular.
And, a lot of the small businesses that we hear about through our partners feel like they're not a target. And so they feel like they don't have to spend on the same types of solutions that maybe a large enterprise or a medium enterprise would. What's your philosophy on that?
My philosophy is they are a target. They just don't know it. They're still living back, 10 years ago, even when you could take a chance on obscurity. Obscurity is gone. The odds are they already know you're out there. Whether or not you've become of interest to them and what they're looking for to make you or to have you become interest to them, that's a different story. But they are already a target. They don't care who you are. They don't care what you do. They just want your money.
Yeah, and as an MSP, I would think that even though the threat landscape and the threat actors targeting your customers have changed over the last couple of years, it's done some significant change targeting MSPs, your business. We've heard a lot of statistics about threat actors targeting MSPs because you hold the keys to the kingdom, so to speak, for all of your customers. So how does that influence what you're doing to protect your own infrastructure?
So we have added many layers of security. First and foremost, I'll go back to two-factor. Everything we do here is two-factor. So we don't use any applications, any of our services, any login you have here, it's always two-factor authentication. If it doesn't meet up to that, then it's probably not something we need to be using here. The second part of that would be, of course, monitoring. You've got to watch what you're doing. You've got to have a good EDR platform in place. We use NetSurian across our networks. Actually, we're in the process, as you know, rolling it across all of our clients. And we're doing that in part in our own expense because we believe it's so important to have that information and to have somebody watching your back door, making sure that the doors are closed and no one's getting in. So it really takes a multifaceted, multi-layered approach. Even email, you can have spam filtering. You can have, something watching for compromises and for account takeovers. We see a lot of that happening. If somebody doesn't have two-factor, we will see the account takeover. And we are moving all of our clients to two-factor. That I can't stress enough how important that is, especially in the email space today. And we're going through the process now. And then at some point, you have to decide if your clients won't let you keep them secure, are they really a good client for you? Do they make a good fit?
We've been having that particular conversation with our partners for several years now. We started out offering our partners a template for a liability release form, some sort of document that they would get the customer to sign that says, you told me about all these things that you're recommending. I'm choosing not to. I'm not going to hold you liable if I get breached. You said that you're deploying all of this across all of your customers. Do you still have some customers that push back?
We do, but we're changing internally how we handle those, and we're to the point now where some of them we're just going to have to let go. It's become too important, and we're risking our own reputation every time we try and support somebody who won't let you secure their network. And I don't think it's worth us taking that risk any longer. If they're not that, then I can tell you there's many MSPs out there that would be happy to work with them. We're just not one of them.
What kind of advice would you give to maybe a guy that's starting up an MSP and who may feel like he's got to take anybody and everybody so they can get revenue in the door? What would your advice be? Is it worth it? How would you suggest that he think strategically about that?
Yeah, I can tell you, I was that guy. So I know exactly what that's like. And it was a mistake. It did get to the point after 3 or 4 years where I had to look at my client base and give up quite a bit of revenue to let those clients go that weren't letting me do the right thing. And doing that, it reduced our workload. So the amount of time we were putting in went down. Our revenue went up because the clients we brought in were the clients who were targeted to be a good client for us. And that's probably the best advice. Figure out who you are, and then make sure that the clients that you bring in are the clients that really fit who you are. They'll be happy, and you'll make more money by doing so.
Yeah, and I think that's something that anybody in any business could really learn from is, know who you are, know who your ideal customer is, and really focus on that.
hmm
Um, the one-offs or the outliers always cause problems and break process and make you more inefficient. I think that's really good advice.
Yep, that's the truth.
So, what's your approach? Are you, the typical MSP has a good, better, best kind of package. Are you offering, bundles of services that grow in capability and cost? Are you more of an a la carte shop? Do you have only one set of offerings? What's your go-to-market look like?
No, we pretty much offer, as far as security is concerned, it's the same slate across the board. Here's what it's going to take. Here are the layers it takes to secure a network. The options come in, how big and how complex is your network? And I'm going to go back to that Shurian as an example. Are we essentials or are we enterprise? Those are really the only questions that come in. But as far as the layers that we put in place, it's standard across the board.
So you've got two-factor authentication, you've got a strong firewall in place, you've got endpoint protection, EDR. I believe you're using Sentinel-1 on
Correct.
the endpoints. Um, DLP, anything that you would typically see in more enterprise type of customers, or
No, there's the only other thing I would say that you didn't mention on there is from the email. We do use Barracuda, and we have the Sentinel component for all of our clients, just to watch for any account takeovers.
so we spend a significant amount of time talking about the NIST cybersecurity framework. The kind of the best practices structure for how to secure an environment. Um, and I think that the one piece of that most customers and most MSPs that we talk to struggle with is the identify or the kind of the preventative or the predictive side of things. Is what is your thought around vulnerability scans, risk assessments? I mean, what are you doing on the front end of that framework to kind of help mitigate the attack surface or minimize the attack surface before you start, day to day care and feeding and operationalizing a customer's environment?
Well, having control of your network is first and foremost. As I'm sure you're aware, it's very easy to lose control. You let one person have permissions they shouldn't have, and you've now lost control of your network. So having that locked down is first. We're a SOC 2 type 2 facility. So we've been through the processes, and a lot of that we have to do. So vulnerability scanning, we do a monthly scan of our network. Actually, the scans are done daily. We pull the reports, every month to make sure that nothing's changed. Watching for changes in permissions, whether it's shares or on the network, open ports, external penetration testing. We have, of course, all the logging that Netshurian does. We also employ Perch here, so we're actually watching the packets as well. So there are many different angles that we lock down from here and watch. And you have to being an MSP, you have to be, on the top of your game.
I think what you just described there is unique in the marketplace. There's not very many MSPs that are scanning their own network that frequently. So I applaud you for that. That's got to be, a decent cost, but also, a lot of effort involved in keeping up to date on that and analyzing that data.
What choice do we have? If we get compromised, we risk every one of our clients.
Yeah.
We're just not willing to do that.
So we've talked a little bit about some of the vendor partners that you have in your network, in your customers' environments. Talk to me a little bit about how you view partners. What does a good partner look like for you? A good vendor partner? Is it just the technology, or is it move beyond the capabilities of the technology into the company? What do you look for when you're evaluating vendor partners?
Well, technology is important, but beyond that, you need a good relationship. You need an ongoing relationship where you can work with people. If you've got issues, or, a lot of times we'll run into issues where it's just a lack of understanding. So, having good training in place, all of these things tie into having a good partner relationship. And I know
So
reaching out to somebody, being able to reach out to somebody and say, hey, we're having this issue. Is this us or you? And having a partner who's not going to say, hey, not us, and actually try and help you through that is very meaningful.
yeah, as I think about partnerships, I'm responsible for the program, the structure of our relationship with our MSP partners. So there's the kind of structural aspect of it, but then that relationship, coaching my team and the people that are interacting with our partners on a day-to-day basis is the soft skills are really important to making sure that we're approaching it from a customer centric perspective as opposed to the vendor centric perspective. Um, Sometimes whenever a partner program launches a new component or a new capability, not from a technology perspective, but from the program perspective, the team that's building that thinks that it's the greatest thing ever, and then it gets rolled out to the partners, and the partners are like, nah, swing and a miss. Talk to me a little bit about maybe one of those situations where you don't have to name any names, but when has a vendor put something in place from a program perspective that wasn't well received by either you or your peers?
So you're talking about from the partnership level?
Yes, sir.
Because I can tell you my biggest complaint right now is with another EDR solution. I mean, as you said, we're with Sentinel One, but the previous company made a good sales pitch. They had what looked to be a good product. And shortly after we took it on across all of our client base, they started to walk away from the product.
Mm.
So that's probably not a good thing to do.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Mhm. And there was absolutely zero communication about where the program was going, the support to dry it off. And they're still in business and they're still trying to sell the product. Although, I wouldn't recommend it to anybody at this point. It didn't have to
Mm.
be that way.
Yeah. Well, so we talked a little bit about what you're doing today. What are some of the things that you're either looking into or researching or thinking about, for the next year, 2 years, 3 years? What's consuming some of your future thought?
Honestly, I would say AI,
Okay.
because I think AI is going to become more and more important to finding and detecting threats and ongoing threats in real time. If you're notified of a threat or the system you have in place tells you an hour or two after it's happened, a lot of damage could be done in an hour or two.
Especially nowadays, yeah.
Right. So moving the bar closer to that, real time marker is really what the focus is, and that's what we're always going to strive for, is just to keep moving that bar closer.
So AI, there's a whole bunch of different technical capabilities that are kind of bundled under that big single moniker. Machine learning's been out for a while. I'm assuming you're not talking about kind of the standard machine learning based solutions that require somebody to program an algorithm that can then look for the specific things that it was programmed to do. But you're talking about true self-learning artificial intelligence, correct?
Yes. Yeah, and I don't think we're far off from that in this space.
I just saw an article about the first car that was designed by AI. So completely designed by AI, and then all the parts are 3D printed using lasers and metallic powder. And they're able to come up with these organic structures that a human engineer, A, couldn't design, and B, couldn't manufacture.
Mm.
using traditional kind of CNC and forging kind of processes. So it's definitely the stuff works, right? And
Mhm.
it's working across a whole bunch of different industries. I think cybersecurity is one of those areas where we're starting to see true AI finally become realistic and productive there. Any particular types of cybersecurity technologies that you're looking at that leverage AI?
No, it's every single one of them. Everything's got to get smarter in that space.
Yeah, I agree with you. So, what do you feel like is the biggest issue that the MSP space in general should be paying attention to, but we're not? What's not being addressed today?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind would be clients.
Okay.
They are the biggest risk. Getting your clients educated, helping them understand. I mean, education, of course, has got to be a key component of anything we're doing because people are the weakest link. And until we get them trained and smarter, we're going to continue to have problems that just, and compromises that just should not happen.
So
Don't.
expand on that a little bit because I know that there's a lot of different vendors, not a lot. There's a handful of vendors out there that provide cybersecurity awareness training for companies, and most MSPs that we work with include that as a requirement or an included component of the solutions that they deliver. And when you couple that, you're training everybody or should be training everybody with the fact that there's going to be an endpoint protection solution on every device. And yet still we get 70% of breaches that originate at the endpoint. What do you feel like needs to change there from an employee awareness, employee training perspective?
I don't think you can change much, except at the client level, they can hold their people accountable. One of the things
Okay.
we do, to help that is we do testing. We do monthly testing at our clients. We will send phishing emails, spear phishing emails, just to see who's going to do what. Let it be public. So and so failed. They're so careful. They so don't want to be on that list that they are extra careful.
So you've seen that technique or tactic get implemented yet,
Sure.
or do you think? Yep.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And what was the impact? What was the outcome of that?
We went from a 36% failure rate when we started testing. After the initial training, we dropped down to about 15%. Once the results were released, we started dropping down to about 10%.
That's not insignificant.
No, it's not.
Interesting. So is that something that you're rolling out across all of your customers? And I would assume that there's some sort of cultural component that the company has to get familiar or comfortable
Mhm.
with doing that.
Yeah, it's really done on a client by client basis. Some companies don't want their people to know that they're being tested, so of course that is not going to work there. Although I do try and talk them into it. Just what's the end game here is to keep your network safe, not to trick your people and catch them. It's
Right.
really to keep your network safe. So we're always striving to do things that way.
Interesting. So you're in headquartered in Erie, correct?
Mhm. Correct.
Um, would you say that most of your customers are centered in that Erie geographic area, or how far do you go?
We have clients, mostly we are centered in Erie. We have clients in Cleveland. We have clients in Buffalo. We have clients that have offices all around the country and all around the world. We have clients with offices in China, and
Interesting.
in Ireland, in Texas, in California. So we're pretty much covering a fairly large geographic area.
So do you find any differences in your customers based upon geography, approaches,
No,
philosophies, anything?
no, I don't think we could really, every customer is so different. I don't think we could really break it down that way.
Cool. Well, tell me if you feel like I haven't asked any questions relative to cybersecurity. Obviously you spend a lot of time thinking about cybersecurity as it relates to your customers and to your own network. What kinds of questions would you hope that somebody in my position would be thinking about? Either relative to this conversation or relative to the solutions that we're providing on a day-to-day basis?
So I think really, how do we keep, whether it's for you or anybody else, how do you know when you have as many endpoints as we do that you are fully deployed? That's a big issue. That's a big concern across the board. There are things we can do, but I think I know in my own MSP when I had that, and even here we're always watching that and having tools across the board that could do that. So how do we keep every endpoint secure? How do you know that every endpoint is running all of the tools that are needed to keep it safe?
Do you find that people are either intentionally or unintentionally disabling technologies, or are you more concerned about, a device that got deployed in the network that just wasn't fully configured properly?
So a lot of what we do is deployed automatically. So when a machine comes into our system, of course, a lot of the software, including NetSurian, gets deployed automatically. But there are cases, there are instances where for some reason it doesn't happen. When you're managing tens of thousands of endpoints, that it becomes hard to keep track of all those.
Yeah. Yep. That's interesting. So we have a capability. It's a report that's in our system about non-reporting systems.
Mm-hmm.
So, a device gets NetSurian installed on it or VentTracker installed on it, and then it stops reporting in.
Right.
And across our partner base, that's a number that doesn't seem to go down very often, right? We'll bring it up with partners, and it's confusing to me that most MSPs don't seem to be as concerned about those devices that aren't reporting in. Obviously, your situation is different. You are watching that. You're paying more attention to that. What kind of advice would you give to me to share with MSPs about why it's important to pay attention to that?
Well, even from the NetSurian perspective, let's talk about it just from there. The more information that I can give you, the better job your SOC can do in helping keep us safe. It's very quick for me to go out and deploy to desktops and endpoints. I can deploy that in 15 minutes. I don't care how many computers you have. But now get your Sonic wall or your firewalls tied in. Get your Office 365 tied in. You've got to have everything tied in, because if you're not watching all the vectors, they're going to find the vector that's not protected, and that's where they're going to come in.
Yeah, that's good advice. Well, as we wrap up here, I normally ask some personal questions on the front end of this conversation. So I've got two questions for you. Tell me about something that's unique to you, something that you enjoy to do that maybe the average person doesn't know about you. Hidden talents yeah.
Well, I think we had talked at one point. I am a musician.
Now that's right. So you don't brag about that, it sounds like. Any particular instrument, or are you a savant and you can pick up anything?
I am primarily a keyboard player. I make that distinction from a pianist, but I can play anything but a reed instrument. If it's got a reed, I can't do it. But other than that, I'm pretty much good to go.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. I play the guitar a little bit, and I have to really focus and struggle on that. So to be able to pick up something else and be capable on it would be pretty cool. So that's pretty cool. And the last question, when you're talking to your family, siblings, kids, significant others, parents, how would they describe what you do?
When you talk to somebody and they have no idea what you're talking about, they get that glazed look, and you get the courtesy nod. They do their best.
Yeah, my kids always tell their friends, my dad's a computer dude, and I'm a salesperson. I'm not a technical person by any stretch of the imagination, but that's the easiest way for them to describe to their friends what I do.
Right, and that'd be about right.
Yeah. Well, Tom, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate it. We appreciate Velocity Network and your partnership with us. I'm impressed by your philosophy and how seriously you take cybersecurity for your customers. If I had to hold any organization up as a gold standard, I'd certainly pick Velocity Network. So thank you for spending some time with me, and I appreciate it very much.
I appreciate that. It was good to be with you.
Same here. Hopefully we'll talk soon. Thanks, everybody.
Bye bye.